welcome to you. You're listening to The Music Business Buddy with me, Johnny Amos, podcasting out of Birmingham, England. I'm the author of the book, The Music Business for Music Creators, available now in hardback, paperback, ebook format at all the major bookstores and online. I'm a music creator with credits on a variety of major and indie labels as a writer or producer. I'm also a senior lecturer in both music creation and music business. Wherever you are, whatever you do, please consider yourself welcome to this podcast and to a part of the community around it. I am here to try and educate and inspire music creators from wherever they are in the world on their quest to achieving their goals by gaining a greater understanding of the business of music. Okay, so today's episode is a conversation with media composer Chris Tye. Now, Chris is somebody who I've known for a few years, and I really wanted to bring him onto the podcast and to talk to him predominantly about his career as a media composer, but also kind of what led him to that, you know. So just a bit of context here, right? So I'm in my mid-40s, right? And I was brought up predominantly in Birmingham, and then I went off when I was 21, lived in London, and then toured a lot, lived out of a suitcase, basically came back to Birmingham when I was 30 years old, having been pretty busy for a number of years. So one of the things that I did when I came back to Birmingham 15 years ago is I kind of looked around the scene and was like, you know, who's been here? Who's doing cool stuff musically? Who are people talking about? And just this name kept coming up all the time. Chris Tye. Oh, you want to go and check out Chris Tye? So I did. And I went to go and see him perform at a venue, and I was wowed. I was truly blown away. I don't think I'll ever forget it, in fact. It was wonderful. He played with a collection of musicians around him that backed him as he performed so brilliantly with such heartfelt emotion, such a superb sense of wordplay, and just amazing compositional ability. Now, as the years have gone by, I've got to know him through music and through music education. We both lecture at the same university, and I wanted to talk to him about, you know, what happened to that artist, and you know how he evolved into what he is now, which is a very successful media composer. He does, you know, like many music industry professionals, he does a lot of different things, right? You know, he produces for different artists and that kind of thing. But it's his media composition work where he really, really, really excels. And I think a big part of what has helped him to excel is what his background is in music. So I really hope that you enjoy this conversation with him. He's a really nice guy, as you'll see, and he's very open about kind of what he's done over the years and where it's led him to. So enjoy the conversation. I will check back in with you at the end. Brother Tye.
Hey, Johnny.
Question one. There are numerous roles that you play in the music industry, including being a songwriter, a producer, a composer, a technologist, a lecturer, and a mentor. But you're also a very critically acclaimed artist in your own right. So let's just go back a little bit to the albums that you created, such as Somewhere Down the Line, The Paper Grenade, and Stronger in Numbers, and just tell us a little bit about your evolution throughout that time period as an artist. Like, how did that kind of start for you? Were you producing yourself and that kind of thing?
Yeah. It's good. It feels like a long time ago, actually. But I was kind of. I'll start right from the beginning because it'd be easier for me to remember.
Yeah.
I was always in bands at school and that sort of thing. Never really considered myself a solo artiste. And we moved over to Birmingham after sort of college and uni and all that stuff, and started doing open mics, and then got gigs on the circuit, and then so that was like around. I was about 21, so 21 to 23, gigging around there, and then started working with Blue Whale. I think are still going as sort of an education setup. But he was a studio at the time, Benny and Boydie, and they just sort of helped me out so much with putting on cool gigs and studio time and just giving it a bit of, just felt like a sort of, looking back, it was a bit like an artist development thing, really. And they sent out it's a really good idea, actually. Like, I've not seen anybody else do it really, but they sent out everybody that came through their stable. They sent out like this CD with just like, I don't even know if it was full songs, but just some snippets of stuff we'd recorded, and it got picked up by a label called Head Wrecker Records, which was like some people from Virgin, some people from Universal, and they sort of put some money in and created this little indie. They were really great, and they tried to. This will sort of speak to kind of how I've changed over the years, really, I suppose. But they tried to put me with this producer. I don't know if you know Fink.
No, I don't think so.
So he's a massive artist now, like plays all over the world, and but he wasn't at the time. He was a producer. They tried to put me down in Hoxton. I forget which studio it was. Hoxton Square. There's loads of studios in Hoxton Square, isn't there? With Fink, right? And I was like, no way, I'm doing it at Blue Whale. Keeping it real. And so he was like, right, okay, so Fink will come up and he'll produce at Blue Whale. So I was like, okay. And then he came up and he said, looking back, he was perfectly fair enough to say this, but he was like, yeah, nice little studio. But we sort of took it as if he was dissing the studio. So in the end, I insisted that Benny did it. Benny produced the first. They called it a mini album because it was like 9 tracks. I've never heard that phrase before or since. And we just set up and played live. That was what we did. And it is what it is, really. That I kind of don't really stand by it. In fact, I took it down off streaming.
I noticed that you'd taken it down. Yeah, why?
Yeah, I just feel like it was all too soon, really, to have. I think I'll remember it more fondly as the years go on, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that deal that I had, they paid for that album to be done, and then we did then eventually go down and work with Guy Massey in from like Manic Street Preachers and Fretwell and all that stuff. We did 10 days down in Hoxton Square, Milo Studios. It was amazing. And each one of these things, you just learn so much. Like, those recordings never came out, which I think it was like the tail end of that part of the industry where they would just sort of throw money at it. And so we got a really great experience, but those recordings didn't come out. Then the label folded. And then the next thing I did, I worked self-funded with Tim Bidwell down in Brighton, which was incredible. Again, did an EP with him, the Matchbox Stand.
Ah, okay. The EP, the Matchbox Stand. That was okay. I thought you produced that. Okay.
And he was amazing as well. Like, an amazing person to learn from. In terms of like not overcrowding things, and like you just got to be really careful if you double track this, Chris, because it turns it into something else. I remember a lot of stuff from those sessions about how to just you're always sort of looking for systems when you're producing stuff, like, and he used to do 6 vocal takes, like just this arbitrary number, 6 vocal takes, and then we comp into that, and then if we need to, we can do more. But I'd never really it got this sort of framework which I really enjoyed working with him. And really cool, down in Brighton by the beach. You know what we're like about the beach, us Brummies. And that was amazing. In the time as well, building up to that, when I did sort of the first album and the recording in Hoxton, I was managed by a guy called Paul Dando, who helped me a lot as well, and I'm still in touch with him. One of those management arrangements where I'm never really, I can't imagine what he got from it in the end.
Right.
But I guess a lot of it is speculative as a manager, isn't it?
Well, love and legacy as well, right? That's kind of
lovely guy, and was able to. Yeah, you're right. People will help, won't they? I think.
Yeah. That's never changed, has it? Like, there's there are still people out there. I do it a lot for people, where they'll just reach out and literally just this morning, somebody's emailed me and let's send me a song. I'm like, oh wow, this is great. Let me help you, because I know what it's like. Anyway, exactly. I digress.
Exactly, but that's the point I wanted to make, actually. That like it's cyclical, isn't it? It goes round because I've even. I was talking about before we started recording, some really honest feedback that I'd got.
Oh yeah.
On a song. I even count that as a sort of the fact that he was bothered to tell me the truth, and sort of risk upsetting me. And it wasn't because he was a horrible guy. He was trying to like spur me on to do better.
And just for the benefit of the listeners, dude, so we were talking earlier about kind of this piece of feedback that was given to you once that kind of really, really was quite brutal,
Yeah.
and about how it kind of shaped you. And I should have been recording really, but I asked you an interesting question. I said, how long did it take you to realise that he was right? And you said 2 days.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I don't think it was that long. I remember I'd ridden my bike over to his house, and I remember sort of riding back thinking, oh, man, I was sort of all fired up. And then I spoke to my wife when, not even sure she was my wife at the time, but she had to listen to me, is the the upshot. So, yeah, and she just helped me navigate it, really. And I suppose... And then, and beyond that, in the next album that came after Matchbox Stand, I basically had started, I did about half the album with him. We talk about like support. He had a really nice studio set up in his house, and I was a little bit at a loss. You know, I'd done this EP, done some gigs, and I'd got all these other songs that I wanted to do. And he just helped me all the way through, like from selecting from all the demos and starting recording things in his house. We didn't finish the album together because I think, to be honest, I was probably just taking the pill, taking up all his time. So we did about half the album together.
But also, it's worth adding, you had a really, really, really supreme level buzzy name at that point. Like, there was a lot of people talking about you. A lot of people knew who you were. So I'm sure, actually, he was, thinking, hey, this is a good investment of my time here, no matter how you see it.
Possibly. I mean, actually, we a couple of years before, it's funny, it's really interesting actually thinking about all this stuff links together, because he runs, people are going to know who he is. I need to anonymise, don't I?
It's okay.
So yeah, he's very successful media composer, and was doing a lot of library work. So two years before we started working on this album, he pulled me in to basically, so they get a brief, you know, I think it was for like a Lynx advert or something. So it wasn't library the first one. It ended up being library. Basically, anything that said acoustic songs, things, they'd think, oh, and I've done it since. It's like, oh, we could start with Chris. You know, we asked Chris if he's got any. So these two writers, these two sort of heavyweight writers, pull me in. Chris, you got any demos you're not doing anything with? And of course, as you know, the answer to that is always yes. So I just let them rip this song apart that I wasn't using, and taught me loads of stuff about co-writing, and you know, I'm not sure, I'm probably skipping ahead here, but
it's good. It's good.
So they some key takeaways from that co-writing thing. We sort of were brutal, chopped up the demo and made it into something, and then there was a rule that's like there's no bad ideas to start off with, just to get everybody comfortable. And then we went away and wrote our own lyrics. Then we came back and cobbled together the best of all the bits of lyrics and stuff. And then after that, then it becomes quite, once you've built that trust, then it is quite, no, I don't like that, and this is why I don't like it. And you can be really kind of truthful with each other. But that structure, I always think about with, because I've done some co-writing where it feels like if you get shot down too soon, it's hard to pull it back, isn't it? Because we're all kind of sensitive, egotistical creatives, and we need to feel that we have value, really.
Yeah.
We do.
That's very true. Well, the greatest gift anyone can ever give anyone is to listen, right? You know, so even if you don't like an idea, you got to listen, right? You
Totally.
Dude, just before we move on to the next question, can I just ask you, so you talked earlier about Headwrecker Records. Now, I didn't know about that as being a part of your early career. Don't worry if you don't know the answer to this, but just purely out of interest, just looking at the kind of the history of it and the sort of business side of it, did presumably they as an independent entity of kind of, you know, record executives from different companies, they will have funded those recordings and therefore own the masters.
Interesting. Yes, I think they did. But they gave them back to me when it all folded. So they just, I can't remember exactly what the process was. So all the masters became my own at that point.
Was there a liquidization caveat in the contract, as in, like, if this company liquidizes, all rights refer back to the original rights holder? Was there anything?
I don't know. It was one of those, like, I had a music lawyer and they were sort of helping me navigate that. So in terms of like I guess there was really, but it didn't happen until a few years later. I mean, it's only really when I've started doing the sync stuff that I've really switched on to the royalties and things. I was kind of fairly young and clueless at the time, until you start self-releasing and that kind of stuff. So with those things, I didn't even think about it until they went, oh, here, you can have these masters now. And I guess I think I kind of thought, well, they're mine anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's the.
But they weren't.
Well, it's just an interesting one, because sometimes, as we all know, when it comes to things like sample clearance, it can be a minefield. It's way more difficult than it should be, because it's like, well, who owns this? Who has the rights to this? Oh, it was this company. Oh, but then they got merged with this company, but then that person left. It's like, well, who owns it? So, for example, just hypothetically speaking, if you were to kind of revisit some of those recordings from that time, because I believe it was we all have different golden eras to our career where we shine brighter than other times. I think that was a time where you shone very, very, very brightly. There are other times since, which we'll get onto in a bit. But just, devil's advocate in me kind of just thinks, I would love to hear some of those recordings that no one ever heard. And instead of just taking them as they were, with those takes, with those people, and just kind of go, let's just have a look at some of the acapellas from that time. Because there are, for example, electronic labels out there that would love to get their hands on some of those acapellas and use them. But if there's not clearance in place on the masters, if they like it, the first thing they're going to say is, who owns the masters? What kind of clearance have we got? Blah, 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 blah. There's a treasure chest of recordings out there somewhere, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I see what you're saying. I think it's kind of quite smart business, what you're saying. But I don't know if I really struggle. The artist in me just wants to do new stuff all the time. And yes, I could revisit, but I'd probably want to re-record vocals, because like I alluded to earlier, I think all those opportunities with the first album and then immediately a load of budget to go and record at a top studio in London, I wasn't ready for any of it. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready in my skill level. I wasn't ready in my attitude towards it. I was still very, very much of the kind of that's it now. Got my deal. I can finally sort of not took my foot off the gas, but had this idea of what labels do. But it's never really been you still always had to work.
Yeah.
Even when labels were taking the weight, and the more hard you let them work, the more you pay for it eventually anyway, So.
Yeah. And that's, but, there's many, you do, and there's many people in that situation. We've all been there, and it feels like, right, you've signed this deal, right, that's the goal, you're there. You're like, no. That's when the work starts, or that's when things get more complex, or, Okay, so moving on into 2018, right? So you composed an album for the award-winning original motion picture, Irene's Ghost. How did that project come about, and kind of how did you find the process? Because you'd have been through quite a lot by that point musically.
Yeah, so... Okay,
and that's an album that you haven't ripped down from Spotify. It's still there, and it's amazing.
I really love it.
So how did that project kind of come about? Did you have a bunch of songs that that you kind of purposely wrote for to screen? Was it like kind of scoring style, or was it more songs? Or
so I'd always really, I think it's a dream for a lot of composers to transition into that sort of world. So somebody approached me based on the artist stuff. Can we use this song? Which one was it? Was The Unassuming Star off the Paper Grenade that they wanted to use, which they did end up using. And then so I met the guy, and then in a rare flurry of self-confidence, I said, "What are you doing for the rest of the music?" And he said, "Oh, we're going to look around for individual tracks." So I went, "Well, why don't you just let me do it?" I don't know what was up with me that day. I was really believing in myself. And so he said, "All right, yeah." So I didn't have my setup at home at the time, so I booked 2 days with Michael Clark.
Clark, yeah.
It was amazing. So he did the other half of the Paper Grenade. I was saying I'd done it with 2 producers. We sort of co-produced with that, and he was amazing. I learnt more from him than anyone really. We worked really well together, and so I just went in. Kind of wrote songs really quickly. We co-wrote one. So did 6 tracks, sent them. He liked them all, this director. and then from then on, it was like, right, you're doing the sound, and then, you know, like, so the thing I like about that is I was kind of at a bit of a stage of being a bit down on my luck with the artist thing, and then that happened, and it happened purely because of the calling card of my artist stuff that was out there. So that's like, obviously teach as well. So I often say that to students, you know, when there is a reason to create, you know, you never know which sort of path it's going to take. And then of course, once you've done a film soundtrack, people look at you in a different way, and maybe it opens other doors then. So it's all, and plus I just loved the process of, like, people had said, oh, you have to make loads of music, but I was like, what? Like, that sounds like an absolute dream, and different versions of things. And so some of it was recorded with Michael, some of it was the one track that I'd got off the album, and then I set up a studio at home. It was a long process. I think we were sort of working on it for about 2 years, which was perfect because I was able to just deliver things, and then it got a bit more specific. Can you look at some music for this scene? And I didn't negotiate. This is probably really bad advice, but I didn't negotiate money until quite near the end. So just when I was getting to the point where, look, you're going to have to demonstrate commitment to me here, because I've done 5,000 hours. But yeah, it worked out. But I guess in the future, I have been a lot more upfront about money.
Yeah, well, we live and learn. I mean, it's okay to make mistakes, isn't it? That's how we learn, isn't it? You know.
But also, I was fledgling, wasn't I? So I didn't really feel like, all right, then let's talk. You know,
yeah.
I did my best to try to play hardball and get as much as I could.
But you're always at the mercy of budgets anyway in that world, right? You know, it's like it's like when you're talking to I don't know, record companies, for example. It's like, you know, they already have a figure in mind of what they're going to pay you for the production. It's just like it's not like there's that, like the wiggle room might be on, I don't know, points or something. But it's like, well, this is the budget for this, and films are the same, right? What's interesting to me there is that a lot of the correct me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of the creativity that went into that was whilst the film was presumably still in production. This wasn't
it's a dream. Well, it's a doc, right? So it's a documentary. So loads of it had been. They do hundreds of hours, don't they, for a documentary? And so it was perfect. That's not always the case, but the fact that I could get in early and work like that enabled me to really get what was right for the film. And the director said that I want it to sound. Well, so the album he really liked was Somewhere Down the Line, which is really demoing, and he said that I want it to sound like it's your first album. So it's like, oh, okay, brilliant. I can make this sound shit. I feel like it was the perfect sort of project for me to get started on that kind of stuff. And also meant that I had loads of stuff left over, and it just, like, I always want to be creating, but I do find it hard the older I get to motivate myself to do it just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Even though I do feel that's really important to do that. So.
Yeah, kind of using, it's where the technique comes in, right, doesn't it? I mean, the things that you write from your heart create the art, and the rest of it's technique, isn't it? I just made that up. God, that was good, wasn't it?
Woo! I think, on that point, I think it's really important to do both. In case I forget to say this later, I think you need to have projects that you're working on, and they have a destination. You know, there's a home for the music you're making. But also, I think, completely different hat, you got to come out to your creative place and just create, and just remind yourself to do that sort of creative play, because that feeds it all too.
Yeah, good advice. Well, so following on from that, kind of chronologically, you found lots of success, operating as a media composer, and you've written and produced a wide selection of recordings for like sort of Warner Chappell, Universal Music. Tell us a little bit about how that works for you. Are you making kind of, albums and then pitching them, or are you working with other people on their projects, or vice versa, or how does it work for you?
Yeah, so I've never done a complete album. I worked with a few different companies and got into it through that route, through Poseidon Music, they're called. I was going to say Birmingham based. They're not anymore. It's based in Portugal, I think. But so that got me into it, and then there was a few opportunities that came because they were sort of quite successful, those tracks. And as you know, those libraries, they really do kind of work for you. The more prestigious the library is, they've been out there for years and they're still kind of earning money. So to start off, it was contributing tracks. Off the back of that, I've sort of formed my own connections with those companies and beyond, and they kind of know what I can do. That's an interesting thing as well, because I suppose the temptation is to say you can do everything because we all want work, right? But there's just no way that me making a trap beat makes any sense, because there's people that can just do it so well and so quickly.
It confuses people, doesn't it? I mean, I know that you are a multi-genre producer and a multi-genre writer. I know that I could throw you into any room with any artist and you'd come out and you would yield the right result, right? Because you're brilliant at what you do. However, it's too confusing for people, isn't it? Like, it's got to be, that's Chris Ty. Like, he's the ambient folky guy. Like,
Yeah, well, that's it. It's like, what can you really do? What you're really interested? That's the other thing. Is what do you want to spend your time doing? Like, I don't necessarily want to spend my time making trap beats. Not that I could anyway. I've got nothing against trap.
I bet you could make trap beats, but I see your point.
Well, at the minute, I'm actually making a lot of trap beats because of some community work that I'm doing.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Which I'm loving. But yes, kind of like, and it is a sort of ambient folk, orchestral strings and things like that I can really do. So once you've got a team of people, the music supervisors and the producers of the albums, they kind of just send the briefs my way and I'll do stuff. So I think I've had like 5 tracks on one album. So that's about half an album. So, and collaboration is just really key with that. So now I'm doing what was done to me in the first instance of like, oh, who's the acoustic guy that we can pull these demos apart? And now I'm thinking like, who does this? So I've co-written with loads of people, and that's like, when co-writing work, I know you've done loads of it, but it just feels great, doesn't it? And the opposite is true. When it's not working, it's not so good. But when you're actually feeding off each other, and to me, it speeds the whole thing up. It makes me feel like I'm in a band again, and we can have fun, and you can deliver more, like you can turn out more songs. And,
yeah.
So I've got stuff sitting on various different albums. As you know, it's a bit of a lottery when things get synced. Then you look at your PRS and your royalties statement, and it's kind of a nice surprise. But it still feels quite random, all that royalties. Like you said, I think it needs to be simplified. Did you ever see that Imogen Heap, the music passport thing that she was doing?
Oh yes, I did see a little bit about that. Yeah.
Felt like it kind of made a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's been a lot of initiatives like that over the years, and I really want to see one of them really break off and change things. And unless I'm mistaken, there hasn't really been one yet. Max Martin started a similar one a few years ago, but it didn't really kind of break off either. Well, not in this country anyway, not unless I'm mistaken. But yeah,
does it suit the powers that be? The confusion? I don't know.
I think there's
lots of unclaimed royalties.
Well, there are. The black box, as it were, is a thing. The unclaimed royalties. I think the problem is part cultural and part technological in regards to collection. From the observations that I've made, it's an inability to communicate effectively between all the central management organisations, collective management organisations. Despite their continued commitment to want to communicate with another, there are problems in that, and so we're always kind of but who knows? I mean, the solution to many people is it needs to sit on a ledger, it needs to be digital, it needs to be this and that, and there's kind of a case for that, but there's also, that's fraught with difficulty. So I'm not sure what the answer is. Maybe if I figure it out, I'll put it in the next edition of my book.
You'll figure it out, mate. You'll figure it out. Anyone can.
So you.
One more thing, sorry, mate, about the library stuff.
Yes.
What was the other? Was it library and like media composer stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. So this was the start of me working really closely to briefs, library producers and music supervisors, which in my experience tend to be musicians and are really, really helpful for guys. I just love. I haven't had a bad experience working with one of these library producers, they seem to really understand what they want. And I always get loads of great feedback, and they never seem to get, because I really love feedback. I'll send, I need to work with producers and music supervisors that I trust, and I can send something really sketchy, and then they can kind of sort of help me get it over the line. I need to feel like I'm on the right track, else I kind of get a bit lost.
That's nice. Okay, so if you, so I figured out a few years ago. I'm sure it sounds like you've done the same thing here, where you start working with with sync agents and with supervisors and all these kind of people in that world, and you go, oh, they're all music creators.
They all got their own stuff. They all got their own artist stuff and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And now, of course, that's brilliant for 100 reasons. Many of, a couple of the reasons you've said there about kind of that sympathy and understanding between, kind of one creator to another and that kind of thing. But I think sometimes it can feel like, if we cast ourselves back to our younger years, it can feel like the smoke and mirrors of the industry, where, how do we smash through that glass ceiling? How do we make connections? And actually the idea of it is very different from the process, isn't it? Because the idea can be, how do I get to those people in suits who make those decisions? And you go, actually, no, those people are just me in 20 years.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah. I think you want to believe that there's a kind of, maybe we want to believe that it's harder than it is, and you've got to appeal to all these people that are way out of touch with the music. But
yeah.
In terms of sync work, it feels really nice and supportive, and they want a great album, and they'll soon know if you're not right for it, and and I guess that happens as well. But yeah, finding the right music, and then you're in touch, like direct, and you can talk about things, and when you've got a bit of downtime, you can say, have you got anything that's suitable, and they know it's just kind of a really nice way to work. I really like it.
Good for you. Well, you're obviously very good at it, dude. And speaking of which, adverts, right? So I know you mentioned earlier about an advert, but I know from conversations that you and I have had in the past about kind of creating music for adverts. Can you tell us a little bit about that side of your work and how it kind of differs from other compositional work, if at all?
Yeah, so there's that. I was kind of thinking about this. There's a lot of similarity, obviously working to the brief. But the turnaround generally is a lot quicker. So you'll be, the adverts tend to be where it's like we need this by tomorrow. You need to do a pitch tomorrow, and you have to kind of do your all-nighters. Like it's way more work-life balance friendly to do the sync stuff where you've got maybe a month to deliver some stuff. And I think in terms of like the compositional output, you've got to make it hit a lot quicker, for, like I say, a 30-second advert. It's really got to cover some ground quickly. You got hit points. I guess it's more like somewhere between the sync stuff and the film stuff.
Interesting.
I think like a movie trailer where you've got to hit certain things. The tone of it has got to be absolutely right. You're working
when you say the tone of it, you mean the mood or the sonics or both or something else?
Both, really. I mean, the tone as in like it's just got to be right for the thing. Whereas if you're making library music, there's so many different homes for that music, but this is very specific. So I guess more stress. You're working with ad agencies, so more cooks, but which can be frustrating, but in my experience has generally been really good, because you'll get, like, as well as in contradiction to what we were just saying about how great music supervisors are with all their like support and love, sometimes you need a cold opinion that's not like, that doesn't care what sample you used on the kick drum, or just like that doesn't feel right, that's not right that's really valuable as well, because that to you and I has gone, hasn't it? Because we're so embedded in the minutiae of the creation at that time, but also bigger budgets for all that. There's bigger budgets with adverts. So,
finally, what advice do you have for emerging music creators of today? And I'll frame it that way. You produce a lot of artists, right? You work with a lot of young artists. We teach in the same university, right? We know a lot of what Gen Z are up to right now. So this advice is not necessarily what you would give your former self, because the industry we signed up to ended a long time ago, right? It's a totally new music industry now, and it's really exciting. It's fantastic. But what advice would you give to people now looking to break through with their music into their world?
I like that question, Johnny.
It's a tough one, but there's a lot to it. But
yeah, so I think the first bit would be it hasn't changed. You've just got to get creating. So this is the same thing as me with my 4-track in my bedroom, doing it every day. I'm not saying that was good, but that is sharpening tools, isn't it, for later on? So like the modules I tend to teach at the uni are like media composition things. So the question I get asked a lot is how do you get into composing for media? Which you've just got to start doing it. And then I go, all right, how? Well, there's 2 ways. There's 1,000 websites where you could go and download a clip and start composing to it. And that's great, but you need a little bit of jeopardy. So I think like approach film students, because there'll be no budget, but you've still got to make something great for the end product. And they could still tell you it was crap. And they could still, and it was still open doors. So you've got to like forge those connections and start doing it. You've got to start doing it in the same way that we started doing it, didn't we? Before there was anybody, asking us to do it. Somehow you've got to do that, because here's the evidence. In my case, look at the route that led me into media composition. It was purely through a track that was sitting on an album that I thought nobody was listening to, and I was getting all upset about it. So do these things, do your best work. That's you've got to do your best work. How are you going to stand out? How this calling card, when somebody finds it, how is it going to like blow their head off? Not everybody has to like it. Get the show reel together. So specifically talking about, whatever that looks like. My show reel tries to bring in everything. Possibly it's a bit confusing, but there's sync stuff on there. There's advert stuff. There's the film stuff. Make it short, make it snappy. Nobody's got any time. Make it so that they watch this minute, I would say maximum of a minute show reel, and they're like, yeah. And if it's not, yeah, let's work with this person, then don't put it out. Don't send it anywhere. Wait.
Good. So an edit of your edits.
Just keep chipping away. Just keep chipping away until you play it to somebody and they're like, whoa, and then you can like, I know you could, in theory, wait forever. But if you don't have the work on your show reel, go and make it. You could make like a cool little video on your iPhone, and everybody knows somebody who makes films, and there's film school. There's definitely ways to do it. I am by far not the world's best networker, but I've managed to do it just because I like being around creative people, and it feels. I know that's my home. That's how I can talk to people, and that's how I can communicate effectively. And also, like, if you run into somebody, what music, what you working on at the moment, Johnny, as a sort of an acid test, just have something to say. Just make sure you've got something to say, genuine. So in other words, that little bit of pressure to make sure you're working on something.
Yeah, so you're active.
Also, I would say collaborate. What are you doing, Johnny? Can I come and just watch what you're doing? Or
yeah.
And the other thing that I see a lot from the university is gigging. Don't burn out on the same circuit, because I definitely did it. So once you've played all the venues, it's amazing how quickly people just kind of stop showing up, because I saw you last week. You've got to gig so you can get out of town, but you can also, how can you be creative with it? You can put on your own shows and like go in unexpected place. There's loads of cool opportunities to do things differently and collaborate within all that. So get active. I know that sounds really overly simplified, but what can you do today? Yeah. Who could you call to like put on a gig? And like putting on a gig is a great thing, isn't it? Because we were talking about this before. Once that date's in the diary, there's a whole load of things that need to happen to make it a success. So you've got to start rehearsing the band. You've got to make some flyers, zhuzh up your website, get your social media sorted? How are you going to get people there? How are you going to make it different? Who's going to support? It just triggers this sort of quite stressful chain of events that you have to do once you've got that gig in the diary. So make yourself accountable. One more thing. I know I'm rambling.
No, it's good. Ramble away.
Tell people what your plans are, so that they ask you about them. How's that album coming on, Chris? Like, oh God, because that's really powerful because I don't want to come across flaky with people. So you end up doing it just to not be that.
Yeah. That's so interesting. It's always a piece of advice that I give people. I get a lot of people saying to me, "Oh, Johnny, how should I write my Spotify bio?" And I go, "Well, they just 4 things, right? Who are you? Where you're from? What you've been doing, and what you're planning to do next." It's all it needs to be, right? It's all and that last one's really important. I totally agree with you. I find myself nodding along to everything you're saying, quite honestly do. But, when you said that, I was like, oh, yeah.
You're going to say nodding off.
Nodding
off. Nodding off.
Never. Okay, well, let's wrap it up there for the time being. Dude, thank you so much for being here, a part of the community, helping people and opening your heart to people. It really makes a big difference. There's people all over the world tuning in and wanting to hear the perspectives of people just like you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thanks, Johnny, and thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for being wonderful yourself.
Right, we'll stop there then. I should have cut my laugh out at the end there, shouldn't I, really? But anyway, do I really laugh like that? Gosh. Anyway, I guess I must do. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I think one of the many things to take out of the conversation there with Chris is, his evolution. Not just his ability to evolve, but how naturally it was, that young, buzzy, hyped up singer-songwriter, and he was, believe me, there was a lot of buzz around him. For him to go from that into immediate composer, it's still him, something that I asked him off air, if you like, beforehand. I said, do you still consider yourself a recording artist? And he said, well, yeah, not really, but, in some ways, yes. And I said, well, I think you are a recording artist. You just don't perform. You're still a recording artist. You just don't perform what you're doing live, dreams, they evolve, don't they? They go from somewhere into somewhere else, and it's beautiful when that happens. We none of us stand still, do we? In this trade or in any other trade for that matter. And if we do, we struggle, So evolution is a big part of our practice, no matter what level we are at. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that conversation. Thank you for being here, and until next time, may the force be with you.